One of the biggest questions is how much is my house worth? Everybody wants to know. All right, let's see it. This is the real story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates in Contra Costa County talk about all things real estate. And today we are having a special guest, which we'll introduce in a few moments, who's an appraiser. So I'm excited about that. But in the meantime, Sherry, what's going on in the market? Anything exciting?
Well, actually, we had a big day yesterday. We have been working with a couple of buyers for 6 years, and we put them into contract.
I couldn't believe it, actually. Um,
Yeah.
And I think that what was so shocking about getting them in the contract was not a week ago, they said to you, I don't think we're ever moving. We love our house and we've done all this work to it. And then she saw this house on Saturday. I didn't even know she was looking, and we wrote an offer Monday morning and got it accepted yesterday.
Yes, she did say that to me about a week ago, and I said, "That's fine, Catherine. I'm glad you love your home. You've been doing a lot of work on it, and if you don't want to buy a house, that's fine. That's all good. We've looked at a lot of houses, and I think you should live where you love. So
It-
good for you."
it-
What was funny about the whole thing was when we were on the phone with them on Sunday, and they were negotiating. We were figuring out the terms and talking about negotiation, and their son, who was very, very young when we started working with him, has grown up a little bit, and he was helping out, figuring out what the terms should be.
Oh yeah, I think he's like, oh, mom and dad, you should add like 5,000 to the list price to show that you're serious.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think he's even in junior high yet, but and he was
Well,
very matter of fact and calm about it. So
well, if they've been looking for 6 years, they've been talking about it for 6 years, so he's probably picked up a few things.
yeah, yeah, some of my favorite. All right, well, that's what's going on with us now. I'd love to introduce our guest. Our guest this week is Jon Baumgartner, and he is an appraiser. And I've known John professionally through my wife, who worked with him for a national lender a number of years ago. And so when I needed to have some appraisals done, she said I should call him. And so that's what I did. John, welcome.
Yep, thanks. Good to be here.
Uh, so, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into appraisal?
Well, okay, this could be a long story, but I'll give you the abbreviated version. 'Cause
Okay.
this goes back, oh my gosh, about 32 years ago.
Wow.
So I first started out with a small medium bank, and actually it wasn't even in appraisals. I was within their loan modification department. And then my manager goes, "Hey, they need some help in the real estate appraisal department." I'm like, "Really? What is that?" So that was like in 92. And this was when banks back then, they had their own staff and they trained them. They paid for all the expenses back then, the continual ed, um, and computers. They just started bringing out computers, but back then we were still writing with a pen on paper.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was, and before I know it, I just got into it deep and worked in the Oakland, Alameda, Contra Costa counties for ever since, and had many multiple facets, departments in the appraisals. I mean, not only just appraisal production, but also quality assurance. I worked with their appraisal specialty 2 to 4 unit properties. I did managing for many years. I did also on top of quality assurance, I did appraisal training and tech support for trainers in the Pacific Northwest. In the
Wow.
last 15 years, I've been basically on my own.
Right. And that's kind of about how long ago that the market really changed. After the recession, and there were all sorts of rule changes, and they wanted to have a harder separation between lenders and appraisers. Um, so what is that? You were no longer working for a lender directly. How would you get work then assigned? Was it through an AMC or individual calls? How do you get most of your work?
So it's very interesting because at that time, when I had to shift gears from working corporate to independent contractor, all the rules kind of changed, right? They had that total separation between anyone making money in the transaction to the appraiser. And you have this firewall in between, which is known, everyone knows, as the AMCs, the appraisal management companies. So, and these AMCs are scattered all over the place. And the challenge, as for me and for any independent appraiser contractor, would be to find a good functioning AMC, because they all aren't the same.
I can imagine.
Right, because some are greedier than others, some are just aren't very well organized, because they're only as good as their clients.
Right.
And if they don't have clients bringing in volume, then they don't have volume. So that's, for me personally, I prefer to work with a handful of good AMCs that aren't greedy, responsive, and they can do, quality communications and quality checks, because there's, many times there are appraisals that come back due to questions from either the realtor, or maybe the underwriter. So I belong to over a dozen AMCs, but probably about 5 or 6 are the ones that I work with regularly.
Interesting. I, my perception as a agent broker is the AMCs take a unfair cut from the appraiser. I'm sure that you might feel that way because you're the one doing the actual work. Do you see any correlation between the companies that compensate you well for your work and then how well they're run? Like, do those go together, or is it hit and miss?
I think it's kind of a hit and miss, but what I can say, and this is my experience, and I know from a few other colleagues as well, that if you are on a couple of those panels of the very large banks, because apparently banks can still have their own AMC, which for me is a little hard to swallow because I think there's still a conflict of interest,
Yeah.
right? Not total separation,
Yeah.
but guess what? The banks still have them anyway. And the
Yeah.
big ones that do have their own AMCs, my experience is that they pay poorly.
Yeah.
They take more than just like 10%. They're taking like 30, 40% of the cut
Yeah.
for their, basically their portal, sending information back and forth, on the portal, and their service fees. So I have dropped all those big larger banks and worked for some good quality AMCs, which are not greedy,
Yeah.
right? So
We had
We
a
go ahead.
appraisal scheduled, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, and the lender was a big bank, and the appraiser sent his secretary down from Sacramento to the house to walk through and take pictures. And then he called us and said, could you look up comps for us because I'm not a member of the MLS.
yeah,
And the house was in Walnut Creek, and it was like red flags all over that. We don't have
that's right.
some girl walking through the house, taking pictures and looking up numbers in an MLS because we have an out of area agent. And we called up the lender and said, this is not going to work for us.
Well, what we
Exactly.
did was we knew a lender, a rep who was local, and said, "Hey," because the person had applied for the loan through the national portal, and so it was assigned out of somebody underwriting in Kansas City, and so the local loan rep took the loan over, got a local appraiser to come out, and rectified that situation. So. Which I think, and this might be a good chance to ask about kind of workflow and process. So, from our perspective, we see the appraiser when they show up at the house to measure it, and then we twiddle our thumbs and can't understand why the appraisal product isn't back in our lap, an hour later because we're impatient and we're like children. So, maybe can you walk through like kind of workflow process from the time you get an assignment until it's been fully, I mean, you might not know all the end part of it, but fully approved by the lender. So like, what does that look like? You get, hey, John, we need this appraisal on this house in Walnut Creek. And then what happens?
Right. Okay. So I'll go ahead and get a request from an AMC. And the first thing I do is I check out the property and make sure it really is a single family, like they say, or because sometimes they get the land use wrong.
Mhm.
So I have to double check the property, double check the fee. If the fee is okay, I accept it, and then I can start calling the contact. If the fee is poor, maybe the property, there's some complexity to the property, right? Or there's some really discrepancies with size and room count with county records, maybe additional work is required. I'll ask for a fee bump. Okay, so we get that approved. And now I'm calling the realtor. And usually the realtor's like, yes, I can see you tomorrow, right now. Right?
We're very
So,
eager.
yeah, of course. Yeah, just waiting for my call. And, I'll get up there as soon as I can. Um, Personally, I like to do pre-work in order to expedite the whole process on my end. If there is good photos of the property and good information I can get from the listing or buyer's agent, then I can start pulling really good comparables, print them out, bring them out with me. And if it's exactly what I thought it would be, then I have all my data with me. I can go ahead and snap some pictures of those comparables and then bring them back to my office. Otherwise, I get to the property, it's like, oh my God, this is expected. And I either have to go back to my office and pull data information, or find a coffee shop, sit there for another hour or so, bringing up information. So, the whole thing for appraisers, like for many people, is being efficient with work.
Yeah.
Right. So, what would not be efficient is for the appraiser to go out and measure it, get back in the car, go back home, do research, drive back out, right? And then drive back home.
Yeah.
So I like to make it one trip, right? So after that, for me, if it's not a very complex property, it's what I thought it was, I turn in that report within 24 hours, if not the same day. And so that for many appraisers, they may have a different workflow. They may see like 2 or 3 properties, you know, within 1 or 2 days, or 4 properties in 2 days, and then they write it all up. That's personal preference. For me, I'd rather just kind of see, get it done, see it, get it done, see it, get it done. So typically after I see a property, I would say like 85, 90% of the time, it'll be submitted by the next day for sure. So that's, I mean, from the inspection, it really shouldn't take so long if the property is conforming.
Yeah. Well, it seems I'm not sure how you're feeling, but this year, volume is down for everybody, and so it seems like turnaround time for appraisers has been pretty typical, from inspection to it being submitted. Now, quality assurance for the lender and review takes another little bit, but it's been 24 hours. But there were times during 2 years ago when everything was selling really fast and there were tons of transactions. It was sometimes hard to even get on an appraiser's schedule, let alone some of them were taking a while to get it back. The So like approximately how many appraisals, if you're working full time, not necessarily extra time, but full time. So like about how many appraisals might you do in a week or in a month that you felt was a full-time load?
You know what? For me, it depends on your energy level and how efficient you are. So in a week, I mean, comfortably, I would like to see maybe 6 properties, maybe
Yeah.
right? If it's crazy out there and I can work efficiently, I can probably do, 8,
Yeah.
right? Maybe 9.
Yeah.
But it depends on the properties conforming. If they're conforming, they should be pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
But where we live, I mean, I live on the East Bay. I do a lot of stuff here on the East Bay. So we're talking the hill properties. It'd be like stuff in Lafayette, maybe up in the hills, the little ranchettes, the custom homes.
Yep.
Sometimes those take longer. They just take longer to do,
Yeah.
right? Or a unit property, that's a very full day for a unit property.
And a big custom home, it's hard to find comps sometimes for those.
It takes a little bit more time depending on the data that's out there, how well you know the area. I mean, if there's not much data, well, then you know exactly what to do,
Yeah.
right? if you aren't very comfortable, then yeah, it's going to take you longer to do.
Yeah. One
It
of the,
seems. Go ahead.
sorry,
No, you go ahead.
one of the mysteries for me around appraisal has always been how you compensate for differences. When you find a house, you've got your subject property, and then you find a comp that has a pool and your subject doesn't have a pool. How do you assign a number to that?
Yeah, so it's some folks go, oh yeah, is a garage 20,000, is it 5,000, whatever. And the best way to think about things is more of a percentage, right? That's one way to think about it. And another one is, now this is instructed and taught to appraisers in classes, is match pairing the adjustments. And what I mean by match pairing is to find, for example, like a view, right? I have the subject property has a nice view. So I could only find maybe two with views and two without. So the ones with the view most likely will sell more. So I would look at the information. What did my sold comparables with the view sell, and what the other two sold without the view? I'm also thinking, let's say they're also similar condition and very similar size. Well, that difference between the view, it's better than guessing, right? It may be 50, maybe 100 grand for the view,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you can get more data and get some kind of a percentage. Is it a 5%, 8%, 10, 15%? And what I'm trying to say is that the information for the adjustment should be somewhere on the report,
Okay.
right? It just can't be like, and I'm talking about the dominant features. I'm not talking about, the difference between, a half a bath or a full bath. I mean, think big picture. Like a bedroom count is peanuts. It's a small little adjustment when it comes to the
Right.
overall, right? Now, a pool, depending on areas too, out there where it's warmer, yeah, I mean, you try to match pair that out, right? If you can find a comp, everything is similar except for the pool, you try to find that difference. But after so many years doing this, you kind of get an idea, what the appraiser adjustment kind of should be,
Yeah.
right? It's not, you're not going to get the same bang for the buck. A lot of people go, oh, I put, $150,000 pool. Why isn't my adjustment 100 grand or
Yeah.
something like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
We explain that to clients all the time. Just because you spend 150 on the pool doesn't mean it's worth that to another buyer or to the appraiser. Two different
Right.
things.
Even that goes to even remodeling, right?
Oh,
If it's everything's super high end, but that market area doesn't really have a lot of that, you aren't going to get your bang for the buck.
yeah.
Is it
Oh,
is it harder to do comparable or adjustments for an over improvement like you were just alluding to? So everybody's got a $10,000 kitchen and you put in a $25,000 kitchen. It's still just a kitchen. Right. You don't necessarily, it's harder to value that up or maybe not.
The appraiser does the best,
Yeah.
that they can.
Yeah.
So if the subject property has really posh kitchen, high-end stuff, well, the appraiser should really try to find something in the area. Maybe even go a little bit farther out, or maybe go a little bit bigger size,
Yeah.
just to kind of prove to the reader, who, by the way, the reader isn't, the realtor or the
Right.
seller or
Yeah.
the buyer. It's
Yeah.
lender. It's
Yeah.
all about risk assessment. So
Yeah.
actually, underwriters don't care about that,
Yeah.
right? But they want to see technically on the report that it's been addressed.
Yeah.
You just can't, you just can't say, well, I didn't find any.
Right.
Now, but if it's over improved and it is good stuff, you do the best you can, and the appraiser should be, if it's a decent market, given a value towards the top end of the adjusted value range,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, the market's not perfect. Appraisers and appraisals, it's not science, it's not math, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking exact numbers here.
Right.
Okay.
a
It
little.
is I mean, some of it's it begins kind of sciencey, right? So you're looking for 3 bedroom, 2 bath houses. You try and find comps like that, but it has become an art form on how you value subject, right? Because the value of a home is largely subject to what a buyer was willing to pay for it. And part of what the appraiser is doing, you can correct me here, from a bank standpoint, is if we take this property back, is there another buyer out there that would pay a certain price for it? And does the
Right.
market hold it? And I think what's interesting, I'm curious. So we as realtors often are regularly telling our clients that the appraised value isn't necessarily the list price or necessarily potentially the sales price. And I'm just curious from the appraiser standpoint, like where would you put the appraised value compared to market value or list price? Do you have thoughts about that at all? Like when you get a contract and you see it sold for $1 million, like I know you're not supposed to appraise to that value, so but it's out there. Like how does that work for you when you're looking at a property?
Well, the sales price is definitely like, okay, so this is kind of like the target in a way. But maybe I shouldn't use that word, but what it should fall right in line with whatever comparables are out there. Something, all the comparables should be addressing the dominant features of the subject, right? Let's don't get away about the subject. The subject is what it is, right? You know exactly what the condition is, you know how it flows, you know what kind of market area it is. A tenured appraiser should know that, okay, if it's in this market area, you know, the comps should come from that area, truly. They all
Yep.
shouldn't be out far, far, far away or in a different market area. Um, but I guess over improvement, people sometimes get confused with over improvement with it can be multiple things too. It can be it can be condition, it could be size, even size. I hear price per square foot, price per square foot.
Mhm.
And but man, that's that to me it's kind of a wrong way to kind of look at it. Unless you're like into high-rise condos and something very structured and super regular and homogeneous, right?
Mhm.
The
Yep.
price per square foot really is it. I mean, it's easy concept for people to understand, but when it comes to homes, there's too many variables to say price per square foot. So I just did one last week, a very large house, and it's just like it's the only thing out here, over 3,500 square feet. I mean, there's nothing there, right? I'd have to go 2 or 3 cities over to find something.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
so the appraiser has to make a decision. It's an over improvement, which is fine. It's just a big house,
Yeah.
and and what is the typical large size homes out there? And and we're just taught and on textbook basically. Well, that's basically going to be the top of the market for size, and you address it, and that's what you're appraising, right? I mean, so I think the largest homes were like 2,800 square feet, right? 2,700 square feet. The house was like 35. So you have all this extra space. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Well, that depends on the buyer, right? That's a
Yep.
that's a lot of house for that area.
But it might be
Small.
that's what the buyer wants.
Right. And to me, I would think it would be a special buyer.
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot of house to heat up or cool down
Yep.
and maintain, where you have more stuff to do and take care of,
Yep.
right? So it's a little bit of an oddball, but it'll sell like everything else.
What's the hardest part of your job?
How funny. Probably well, now that I'm independent, probably just being okay with volume changes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mhm.
trying to be connected to the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as independent contractors, um, you just don't have the camaraderie and constant information exchanges that if you were in a staff environment, in an office environment, because all you have is 2 ears, right? And if you're in an office, well, you have many other people having different experiences, and all that typically gets shared, right? Um, for appraisers, truly, if they have appraiser comrades out there. They can exchange some stories or go to classes. Luckily, they were past the whole COVID thing for the most part.
Hmm.
They're in classes. So independent appraisers like me, we can go to these classes, and it's just kind of really nice to hear, people's experiences that they're having, and then also having an instructor to kind of discuss what has happened out in the field. That's difficult, right? So maintaining good clients, staying connected to the field, right? Being able to work efficiently, right? And maintain and keep and kind of expanding your business. Don't be compliant, compliance just sitting there and just waiting for work. Me personally, I still like to get in contact with and speak to realtors. Some realtors think appraisers are not supposed to talk to y'all, but it's not true. They're just not supposed to talk about real numbers and values. Okay. I encourage conversations with realtors, with appraisers. Let them know, hey, you know what? Here are some comps. You can take them if you like, but I wrote some special notes that aren't on MLS that might be helpful for you. I eat that stuff up because it's, getting information, turning around an appraisal quickly, right? The AMCs, all they want is that this want it done fast.
Yeah.
The lenders want it done fast and the cheapest.
Yeah.
So, how much time do we have to research every comparable? Not much, right?
Yeah.
So information from realtors on sold comps is very helpful because it's going to help me with that appraisal and the next one possibly.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was glad that you didn't say the worst part about your job was talking to real estate agents, because I imagine that some of us are not good don't have great behavior. Especially, I mean, going back before the rules changed, I think that there was probably more pressure put on you. But in an escalating market, it's less of an issue, right? Because the houses are going up in value and the purchase prices you're trying to catch up with. So a cut sale is when the appraisal comes in below what the contract price is. Seem to have been less of an issue. Um, and I think, and Sherry one time had an interaction with an appraiser who came to a house, and I don't remember what you were saying. Didn't he cut you off?
I brought a copy of the contract because I think that's always helpful after I had an appraisal come in because the appraiser had the wrong price. They got the contract, but not the counter offer that had the actual price on it. And they brought value for the page 1 of the RPA. And so I always bring a copy of the contract, and I brought some comps, and he put his hand in my face and said, "I can't talk to you."
Oh boy.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
And this was in the last couple of years.
Really, well, if the appraisers are kind of new, and depending on what class they just were in, and depending on the instructor of that class, in the very beginning with the whole Dodd-Frank thing,
Yes.
they instilled the fear. I swear, it's just like so many appraisers like, oh, I can't talk to them. I'm like, now look, right? Don't go overboard. You can talk about property and stuff like that, but you just can't really talk about true dollar numbers,
Yeah.
We were
right?
told the same thing coming out of Dodd-Frank was don't talk to the appraisers. You can let
Well,
them
that's
in.
I
And
don't know
that's it.
why. It's just that they want the simplest answer to fix things,
Yeah.
right? It's you just can't have one little catchphrase to to solve everything.
Yeah. I think that, being able to say these are the comps that we use when we set the list price, and like here's you can look at here's the essentially the raw data, and you can take it or leave it if you think they're good comps or not, right? That's different from we think that we're 100,000 over that comp is different than this is the comp we used, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. When realtors say something like that to an appraiser, I'm like, oh boy, right?
Yeah.
There's expectations. And I'm like, okay, well, we will see where that lands. But the data is there. And licensed trained appraisers, there's only so much you can really do. right? With the numbers.
Yeah.
And typically, really, most of the time, like, 99% of the time, the numbers for a sales contract lies in there. Unless I've seen the game to where the sales contract is very high and they put a ton down,
Yeah.
right? They got their foot in the door and the appraisal comes in low. Oh, but everyone mumble grumbles a little bit. But guess what? The deal still works.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they still got they have enough down that the loan to value is still, they still have the prime rate. Their loan didn't change because
Right,
of that.
right. But it's a tactic that I saw, I've seen many, many times over the
Yeah.
years, and the deal still flies.
Yeah. So we've mainly been talking about appraisal in the context of a purchase. I imagine you also do refinance appraisals, which is similar, but I've used you personally. I'll use the term retro appraisal. You might have a different term, but when my dad died, and then again when my mom died, we had to, for estate purposes, do valuation of properties. And so, how does that? Well, first of all, besides purchase and refinance, what are some other reasons people hire you to do appraisals? And then to specifically talk about what are the unique problems for trying to appraise to a date that might have been 6 months ago or 6 years ago, depending upon when somebody reaches out to you.
Right. Okay. So, well, appraisers typically do a lot of lending stuff because there's, from banks. That's just most of the work that's out there. But then also there are non-lending deals, like you said, retroactive appraisals or date of death appraisals, right? Or people are figuring out their wills, their trusts. They just want to know. Um, what my properties are worth. I got all these grandchildren and they want to divvy up stuff, right? And they want to kind of get a ballpark number. Uh, so, there's multiple reasons, divorce, separations, and a 10-year appraiser should be able to do all of those.
Mhm.
I welcome them because actually there's no middleman, right? Middle
Yep.
person in the deal. I get the full fee. And it's typically pretty easy working for folks. I don't have to worry about my appraisal being, quality reviewed by different kinds of software and some reviewers sitting in Kansas and an
Yeah.
underwriter sitting in Ohio, somewhere else. So those are typically easier appraisals to do, right? And that's kind of about all of it out there. So yeah, your clients, like I said, if you have any folks looking for any of those type of non-lending deals, myself or I have other fellow appraisers in different areas that can do it.
For the record, we will have John's contact info in the show notes if you want to reach out to him, or you can reach us first and we'll give you his contact information. So it's I found him very easy to work with, and the quality has been helpful for my family. So, Sherry, do you have any other questions for John?
I don't think so. I think it's one of the hardest things to explain to clients about appraisals. And sometimes we talk out of both sides of our mouth. If it's a FHA loan, appraisal matters because it's such a low down payment. And sometimes we'll say to the next person, yeah, you're putting 50% down, you're going to have an appraisal, but it doesn't matter what it comes in at, you know.
Right.
And everything in between. So and one of the things that Adam and I kind of go back and forth on is before we were partners, I used to say in my listing appointment that when I price a house, I try to think like an appraiser because someone's going to come along behind me at some point when we're in contract and they're going to have to confirm the value that I've assigned to this property and hopefully gotten into contract. And so I try to think if an appraiser is doing this, he's going X number of miles radius around the house and looking for only 3 bedroom, 2 bath in the same school district in the same condition and things like that. It's really hard to explain to clients.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you do that, Sherry, because it's very important to know what you think your property is worth, but also what your property is not worth.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And as you know, clients are looking at Zillow and getting, and all the other ones getting opinions
Right.
about what their house is worth from an algorithm that has never seen the house and knows nothing about it. So
Uh,
it's it's a big job, and I can't imagine what it's like on your end when you're producing a document that is put under scrutiny by everybody, you know?
Oh, multiple levels
Uh-huh.
now more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that that must have sent terror through the appraisal industry when AVMs became so readily available. We're all going to lose our jobs to the AVMs, and it hasn't happened. And
No,
my
right.
favorite, there was a sign. We saw a sign when we were traveling one time, and it was online valuation, the the mythical practice of guessing the value of a home you've never set foot in.
Right. I mean, that could be a whole segment in itself, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have
It-
you back sometime. We'll talk about the efficiency versus the quality of a AVM and
you
why
bet.
we could show you three or four. In fact, we used this as a postcard a couple years ago. We showed three different AVMs for actually it was Sherry's house, and how they varied by a couple hundred.
200, $250,000 swing between three of them
And if
for
you go
one
read
house.
read the disclaimer on the brand name that starts with a Z, that they put in their disclaimer that they are within 5%, less than 25% of the time. And it's like it's almost worthless because they can't tell what the view looks like. They can't tell, do you have a power pole in the backyard? They can't tell, has the kitchen been updated? I mean, all the things we've been talking about, as far as the artwork of the appraiser who's walking through. That's why it's not pure science, right? It's like it takes a human to say, what does it feel like when you walk in? I know that you don't necessarily say it quite like that, but if you were to walk into a house and see an amazing panoramic view, the computer can't tell you that, right? It takes the
No,
human experience.
it doesn't know quality, doesn't know
Yeah,
any of that.
yeah, yeah,
It works when you're somewhere out in like a new subdivision out in Brentwood where everything's, new in the last 3 to 5 years, and they were all just a few different floor plans, same for cost per square foot. That means something out there. It doesn't
Yeah.
really
When
around
things are,
here.
yes, when things are super homogeneous like that.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, then the Zillow, it's like, hey, it's okay, I would look at it,
yeah,
Yeah.
right? As
yeah,
just a regular consumer out there.
yeah,
But when you're into unique market areas, which really are areas is unique and it changes quickly,
yeah,
the automated values just doesn't cut it.
yeah.
Oakland Hills, Berkeley Hills,
No,
Lafayette. Yeah,
no.
that's going to work.
Mhm.
Well, it's
Sure,
so interesting.
sure. Do you have the speed round questions ready?
I do. I'm feeling a little nervous about it since last time some of our speed round questions did not work, but let's give it a shot. So, Home Depot or Lowe's?
I go Lowe's.
Okay. Fireplace or fire pit?
Fire pit,
Wow. Um, This Old House or Property Brothers?
this old house
Yeah,
stuff.
me too.
I
We're
think
all
that's a
on.
generational thing.
It is. It
I
is.
think everybody who's like 40 or older, it's this old house.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Granite or quartz?
Quartz for sure.
Yeah. DIY, DIY or hire a handyman?
DIY.
Yeah, DIY, do it,
Do it.
yes.
Oh, do DIY.
Yeah.
DI. Oh my God.
I think I
Okay.
started that. I messed it up. Sorry. So, carpet or hardwood?
Which one?
Carpet
Oh,
or hardwood?
hardwood for sure.
Right, yeah. What are three things that are always in your
That are in my
trunk of your car?
trunk. Let's see here. Extra measuring tape. Kind of boring, right?
No.
I got a toolbox and a blanket and
Oh, yeah.
water and
Yeah.
water.
Yeah. Us too.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Well,
Shall I say Zillow or Redfin?
I'm sorry.
Zillow or Redfin? Dare I say it?
It depends on what you're looking for. I would have to go Redfin.
Yeah.
They're
we
big.
actually sometimes refer Redfin to our clients as a search engine. But we kind of go back and forth on whether we want to recommend third-party websites for our clients.
Mhm.
Well,
Well, the great thing about it is that they've got more money than anybody, and they get listings out to buyers sooner than our own MLS does. So
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, they're a big machine out there.
it's a big
Yeah.
machine. So,
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun to hear an appraiser. For those of you who know, I have a couple in my family, and they have pointed me towards John, and I'm so grateful for his work and for being on our show today. It's been very helpful. And again, if you need appraisal services for any particular reason, John's contact information will be in our show notes, or you can reach out to Sherry and I. Or if you have just any other questions about valuation of your home or anything else about buying or selling. Thanks for joining us for The Real Story. Be sure to like and subscribe and recommend us to your friends and family. We will see you next time. Bye now.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
thanks, everybody.